Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. This podcast is specifically for men between the ages of 30 and 55 who are in committed relationships and who are being told things like, you don't get it, you don't understand, I don't feel safe, I don't feel seen by their partners. If that's your story, this podcast is for you. Now, I've spent over 15 years working with men. I know how they tick, I know how they think, and I know what they don't get. Most of the men I see have the same problems. They're hearing the same complaints. They have the same stories, and often it's a very similar solution. And so today, what I'm going to be talking about is what's at the core of all of these relationship issues. The term I'm going to be talking about today is normative male alexithymia, which literally translates to no word for emotion. And there are a few ways in which this plays out in relationships. The first is that most men did not grow up learning the language of emotion. Think about it. Think about these more uncomfortable experiences that we have emotionally, like shame and sadness and loneliness and embarrassment. Did anyone ever sit down with you and explain to you what those words meant, how to know when you're feeling them, and how to express them to other people? My educated guess is no. In fact, I don't think I've ever talked to a man that was taught about these emotions at an early age. And even if you did learn the words at some point and you kind of got what they meant, in the world of men and boys, we pretend that these don't exist. And if you pretend long enough, that becomes your reality. So when men come in to see me and they say that they don't have these experiences, don't feel these feelings, I believe them, at least in their first person experience. But I also know that there's more to the story because everyone feels these emotions in some way, and they aren't making the connection between experiences they've had and these more uncomfortable emotions. Instead, what they do is they translate them into frustration and anger and stress and anxiety. Those are the words that feel more okay for men to use. But after multiple rounds of feeling frustrated or angry or shutting down and acting out and having that negatively impact their relationships, when they do that enough times, they start to feel confused. And a big part of that is because they don't know what's really happening inside of them. The irony of not being able to really understand your experience is that it will start to feel frustrating. It's like if you went to a foreign country and you didn't understand the language and you're trying to use a few words that you know, but people aren't understanding you. But the more you learn about emotional language, the more sense you're going to make to other people. It's not that there isn't frustration and anger present, but that's often just the surface layer that's covering up the deeper emotion that's protecting you from feeling something more vulnerable. Because what's at the core of all of our relational stress is a feeling of unworthiness, or we might also call it shame. And shame says things like, I don't know if this person really cares about me. I don't know if they really want to understand me. I don't know if I really have worth in this world. I'm not deserving of having the things I want. And if we don't tend to this core feeling of unworthiness, it begins to sprout out into all these strange behaviors and stories, intense interactions that we have with other people, especially our partners. I'll give you a really basic example, and I get a lot of complaints from women like this. So let's say that a man comes home from work and he's often pretty stressed, pretty exhausted, tired, unavailable. And so he just wants to decompress or be by himself or distract himself on his phone. And when his partner comes in to try to connect with him, try to learn about his day, and to share about her experience today, he shuts her down. He gets short with her. His tone is sharp. He's like, can't you see that I just worked all day and I just need a little bit of time for myself? Maybe she asks him to do something and he just gets overwhelmed. And internally, he's like, can't you see everything that I'm doing for us, for you? But let's pay a little bit more attention to this interaction. Odds are he was giving tons of attention and time and energy to his work, trying to make others happy, trying to get things done. He spent the whole day trying to prove that he's worthy of having the job or position that he has. He's completely neglected himself emotionally all day. And underneath that, maybe he feels scared that if he doesn't do a really, really good job, he will lose his job, his ability to make money and bring in resources. And then here's where it gets interesting. What is a man who can't bring in money and resources? For a lot of men, the story is that they would be worthless. They would be unlovable. No one would want to be with them. They'd have nothing to provide the world, to provide a family. And so this unconscious pattern of constantly trying to prove worth, being fueled by fear, that is really the thing that burned him out today. That's what was being neglected, not being tended to, not being understood. And so, yeah, when he gets home, he's in a really sensitive spot. But because he doesn't know that that's what's happening, and he doesn't know that leaning into connection and talking about this would actually help him heal, he just goes into a strategy. He avoids, he shuts down, he puts up a wall, and a lot of times even points the finger because as far as he knows, his partner is the problem. This can be really confusing for partners because when they make a simple request or try to connect and they're met with that type of attitude, they don't know what to make of it. They can feel hurt and neglected and sad and lonely and angry because their man's struggle is getting projected onto them. And it's not fair. And this can totally degrade the safety of your relationship. So although the simple fix might to just be stay in your lane and give him space to deal with things however he wants to deal with them, that's not a great long-term solution. He will just stay in that pattern because there's nothing to interrupt it. Every day is the same thing. This doesn't just get better all on its own. It's like treating the symptom and not the root cause. As men, we have to learn to talk about our shame and our loneliness and our sadness and understand our strategies in the way that we emotionally neglect ourselves throughout the day, if that's happening. Because if we don't do this, it's surely going to come out and spill out onto our partners at some point. And they're going to get real tired of that. So we have to learn the language and the skills to go there. And most men can't really do it on their own. They've never learned how, so they need help. That's why I have a job. I'm essentially an emotional guide, an emotional teacher for men. And so the second way that I see normative male alexithymia play out is in men's general self-awareness. I know there's a disease out there where people really don't have the ability to feel pain. And you might think, oh, that's a good thing, right? You don't feel pain. But it can actually become a real problem because when you need to feel pain, you can't. If you're leaning onto a hot stove, you could be burning your skin off and you won't feel it. So even though you don't feel anything, it's still creating damage. And so although a lot of men pride themselves on being tough, which I definitely think there's a light side to, there's also a downside to that, which is that when you need to feel pain, you can't or don't know how. And pain is really important. It's often the motivation that we need to change. Pain is the most powerful motivator. Some people think it might be chasing your dreams or something, but that's not it. That's not how we're wired. We are wired to avoid pain at all costs. That's what gets our ass in gear. Sure, seeking pleasures and comfort might come in at number two, but first and foremost, we're getting the hell out of there if we're feeling pain. So if you ever see somebody that is really struggling with something and they aren't willing to change, it's probably because they're not feeling enough pain yet. I used to work in the drug treatment field, and it was amazing the amount of resistance that some clients would have to getting help. But really what was happening is there was this system of enabling that was allowing them to stay comfortable enough. And in order to motivate clients to go into treatment, that had to be taken away. No, we're not going to keep giving you money. No, we're not going to keep communicating with you, bailing you out, letting you live in the basement. You aren't going to be able to see your kids. Those are the things that help them feel the pain so that they would want to change. And so in this way, pain can really serve us. It can help us become the man that we want to be, the husband, father, son, brother that we want to be. But if we keep ignoring it, we're going to miss some things. And it really does take slowing down and having a practice to tap into those deeper layers that get missed throughout the course of a busy day or a busy life. So if you think being stoic or being kind of numb or being tough all the time is the best way to be, I'd argue that it's not. You can be that too, but you want to have range. You want to be able to tap into your experience, feel where there's pain, tend to that, speak to that, and share that with the people closest to you, because that's what actually builds connection and trust. It isn't you always having the answer and always fixing things or bringing in the money. Those things are great. The thing you really want is in an entirely different realm. It's worth learning more about yourself and how your emotions work. Now, the third way that normative male alexithymia plays out is in our capacity to hold other people's emotions. So one way to assess this is to think about how you respond to big emotional experiences from your partner. If you tune out or dismiss them or get defensive or constantly jump into fixing their issue, odds are you just don't have a very big capacity to be with their experience. One example might be if your partner is feeling upset, emotional, starts crying, you're just like, oh, here we go again. That's probably flagging that you don't have much capacity for sadness. You can't be with it in yourself, and therefore you can't really hold someone else's sadness. As soon as you see it, you're like, yeah, get that away from me. I don't want that. Stop doing that. And this can have our partners feeling really missed and really lonely. Or if your partner is asking for you to step up more in the relationship, which is common, and instead of being able to take that in, feel into your own capacity for some of the shame or embarrassment or confusion that's there, you'll naturally want to point to them and just tell them it's their problem because you don't want to take that on. So you pass it back to them. And then they're left feeling like they're the cause of all the issues in the relationship. That's not a good feeling. And it doesn't mean that we have to take everything on that they tell us, but we at least have to have the capacity to hold it and explore it and see what is ours there to look at. I see way too many men judge their partners, their wives, for being too sensitive, when actually it's them that has very little capacity and a ton of sensitivity to tension in the relationships. Men often just deal with it differently. They pretend it's not there. They have their shield. They get out their sword. And so I just want to point this out to you that if you're blaming someone for being too sensitive, that's probably a mirror back into your own experience. You are sensitive and you've tried to disown that part of yourself. And in the process, you're trying to get your partner to disown that part of themselves too. This can really kill all intimacy and connection in your relationship. So hopefully that was helpful. So remember to like, subscribe, share, comment if you like what I have to say. If you're a woman listening to this, I suggest you and your partner listening to this together and talking about it afterwards or during. And if you want to look into working with me, my wife, or both of us, you can go to www.bricebauer.com. I'll see you next week. Peace.